Good morning. It is 9:09 a.m. on January 11th, 2024. We are meeting with IAFF for their contract openers. My name is Vicki Powell, Interim HR Director.
Tamika Williams, Public Safety.
Janice Flaw, Human Resources.
Adam Harrison, Fire Chief.
Eric Gilmore, Public Safety Director.
Justin Markham, Local 4131.
Nick Grady at 4131.
Josh Hunter, 4131.
We have Kristen Buell from the County Attorney's Office on Teams. Chief Harrison is going to act as our chief negotiator today, so I'm
Thanks
going
for
to
liking me.
turn the floor over to him.
Alrighty then. Guys, I had a couple things that I wanted to bring to the table. Obviously, my understanding is we both get 3 openers, salaries always being one of them. Do you guys have anything you want to slide across the table to start with, or do you want me to start reviewing some of the things that I wanted to bring to the table? Or?
Go ahead.
Okay. One of the things I'd like to talk about is potentially changing Article 13, specifically 13.04B, and that's going to be in reference to the testing procedure. I'd like there to be discussion, or what I'm proposing is that we change that testing procedure. I'll kind of review it, what I have written, and that Fire Chief and or designee shall call the promotional testing process to commence. The process shall include the following steps. The first 2 steps are the same as they were, and that's the standard written test.
Give them what you sent me.
Yep.
You have a copy.
It's going to be the standard written test, and step 2 is going to be the scenario-based evolution utilizing computer-based fireground simulator. That's the same 2 that were originally there. The third one that I'm proposing is an in-basket scenarios, and basically all 3 steps will be weighted the same at 33.33% to establish a cumulative score of 300 points once they're all done. Step 1 would be removing the passing score of 70 points or more, and add that all applicants could continue through the process. So regardless of score, obviously that written test would be 1 through 100 you could score. If you got a 70, if you got a 69 or a 50, you could still proceed, but it's just going to deduct basically from your overall score of that 300, which is going to put you lower. The reasoning for that is so that applicants could continue on with the process. It allows your members, and for us, it educates the members that weren't able to pass the written to go through the entire process, so they hopefully understand better when they test again. I think it would be more effective for both groups for us to be able to do that and have applicants understand the process better and prepare themselves better for the next run, should they not make the promotional process the next time. So that would be step 1, and that would be the change in step 1, is just allowing that individual to proceed without having the 70. Step 2, we're going to remove the 5-member panel. It was originally where it was 1 ECFR officer, 1 collective bargaining member, and 3 members will be chief officers from regional fire departments. I would like to change that to a 3-member panel. 1 from ECFR, 1 bargaining unit member, and 1 chief officer from a regional department. Just to be upfront and honest, what we're finding right now is it's becoming more and more difficult. In the past, we've had people that would come over and would do it for free from either Mobile County, Walton County, stuff like that. The issues that's coming across right now is these departments, as they become more busy, staffing becomes an issue, as you guys well know. Now they're wanting hotel rooms to be over here. They're wanting us to pay for them to be here. So we're trying to come to an agreement somewhere in the middle where it's a little more plausible, and it will help for the second part, which the third part, which I'm fixing to go into. In the third part, it was typically an oral interview. I would like to remove that aspect and change it to in-basket scenarios, as we discussed in the first part. And kind of what I was looking at there was the in-basket scenarios will be conducted by a promotional board consisting of 3 members per scenario. All scenarios together will total 100 points. So again, that's where you have step 1 is 100 points, step 2 is 100 points, step 3 is 100 points for a cumulative of 300, and you would just rank out according to what those were in total. Of course, you would still have the bonus points at the end. I'm not adjusting that or not recommending to adjust any of the bonus points. Those would stay as currently placed. And before we go to the next one, I'll open up if you have any concerns with that or.
Still want to stick with like a minimum cumulative passing in order to make the promotional list. Still maintain that.
It was at 270.
Is it 210?
210.
210, sorry,
210.
210.
So it's
I apologize.
Yeah, and an average weight of, so you average out 70 for each thing. So obviously that can be a little bit flexible, but this year's the only year I can recall that we've ever exhausted or anything like that. I think there's a benefit of having a cutoff and having a cumulative total of points. Otherwise, what you got to lose, you're going to make the list, right?
If we stuck at 210, would you be interested in keeping what I have written?
Yeah. I think there's some positive changes in there.
And allow some of those test anxiety, things like that, but maybe really good, strong in scenario-based situations or personnel-based situations. This may not be like the academic type person.
Right.
It allows for that flexibility, but you still say, hey, you have to meet a certain threshold.
I think the benefit of it, you're already paying for a process as it is. You have so many young company officers that are coming up. Excuse me. It's exposure. It's good exposure to the testing process. Maybe they're not quite ready that time. This first time around. The next time they've gained some job experience. They're really good applicants that you're hoping to do well. And yeah, they have a rough day on the written test or something like that. But for the especially the younger folks coming in and getting exposure, I think that's a positive change. Because in reality, if you bomb the written test that bad, the odds of you excelling and catching up on the other half, maybe not.
And my intent for this was kind of like almost a training as well as a promotional process. It allows those individuals, we're already spending money on the process, so it allows those individuals to come in and educate themselves of what our expectations are with them as they get promoted. And so regardless of whether they make the list or not, at least they have the expectations of what we're looking for as those individuals. So,
And as they're graduating into, they're becoming acting company officers and things like that, they gain better expectations. We hammer on officer development all the time. And I think by going through that whole process, it helps. It helps with that chance. So I'm good with that.
all right, so I'll go with I'm fine with leaving it at 210 then.
Okay.
What about, you're talking about a training, making it a training process and stuff, where they'll make it. What about, afterwards, especially those that don't make that threshold, right? Meeting afterwards and reviewing the process with them. Hey, this is where you were strong. This is where you were weak. Kind of having that post-interview type thing. That way they know where they need to. Obviously, they're going to know, hey, I failed the written exam. Yeah, I need to study harder or whatever. But maybe it's like they don't know. I don't know how I did in the interview. I don't know how I did in the scenario. I got promoted, but I don't know where I landed at. There was no post to say, hey, and if we're talking about quality improvement and developing these people, they can't develop if they don't know either. So would there be some sort of process to go in afterwards? I could probably, don't have to do a contract, but like operationally at the end of it, hey, just want to come in and talk to you. This is where you did good at. This is where you can improve.
Yeah, I definitely want to go that route. If you guys will notice, like over this last year, I've put the training division with putting that mandatory officer development training in there. And that's the intent, is so that these guys can prepare themselves for the testing process to a certain degree. What I don't want to do is put in training that teaches them to take the test. You see what I'm saying? I don't want to teach you the answers to the promotional process. I want to teach you to be a better individual as a company officer, as a leader and stuff like that. So yes, I would like to do something that maybe hasn't necessarily been done in the past and educate the individuals on where they were weak at without necessarily teaching them what they should have answered on the test. So yes, I am interested in doing that. what type of process to use to do that, I haven't really formulated yet.
Okay.
But I am interested in bringing individuals back in. I don't know if that's going to be a group atmosphere, saying, in general, this is a better way of doing something, and not necessarily a one-on-one and teaching them how to do it. It may be, like I stated, it may be a kind of a generalized, okay, come in guys, this is some weak points that we saw overall of individuals, this is how you can do better next time, so on and so forth, but not a one-on-one with each individual. That's too time consuming.
Right.
And really not effective.
No, and that's perfect. I mean, that's just, that way people can go back and have that develop.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I think we could just remove the sentence, like what you have here, the passing score, 70 or more points, we could just remove that entirely. Could probably just remove both of the last two sentences of step one there. Because it's kind of assumed once you complete step one, you go to step two, so. I think that would satisfy that. Just a second.
So, with the 10 bonus points, say the person scores 199, or let's say 200, I guess. You had the 10 bonus points, do they make the list or do they not make the list? Like, do you have to hit 210 without bonus and then it gets added?
My intent is the bonus points are added,
At the end.
and then whatever that, so if you have 200 and you get your 10 bonus points, those go into your cumulative score.
And then
So
you make
you
the
barely
list.
make the
Yes,
list.
And you make the
so you
list
would make the
because
list barely. So that's the intent. If you add them afterwards, it starts to flaw the system, in my opinion.
and that
So-
gives more merit to
Yeah.
the only
longevity.
reason I was
of
bringing
seniority.
that up is that if you score below this 70 on each, and and it took bonus points to get you to even the bare minimum of what you're setting the bare minimum standard at, yeah, that was the purpose for the question.
Yeah.
They didn't meet the bare,
Well, the max bonus points you can carry is 10 points anyway.
yeah.
So you really have to be on that bubble.
Really, you're at like 3 point, you're getting, if you were to able to achieve all 10 bonus points,
Yeah.
you would only be really achieving 3 points per
Yeah,
each step.
okay,
So it's not a huge amount,
yeah.
and it's 3 questions basically that you would get credit for by having that. And I want the individuals that have been here for a while or have achieved those milestones to get those bonus points, to actually be able to have them effectively count towards something. Otherwise, if it's not, it's kind of, it doesn't hold a lot of water.
Yeah, one of the big points we want to try to emphasize is that the scoring is, ahead of time. It's known that the score sheets, the way things are going to work, will be a 100-point scale. I had some issues with that in the past. I think I don't think it would be difficult to make sure we get on pace with that. It's just acknowledging that we need to stay in line with that.
Yeah, I think it's something we can definitely put in writing, that each step will be worth 100 points. And
But
then
that's there.
Right, and then your cumulative score will be 300 with a 210 to pass, including bonus points.
Okay.
Are you talking about like
That's fine.
objective metrics to go by for each grading scale, or that way it takes a lot of that subjectivity out of it? Is that what you're?
No, I'm saying that if you're only supposed to earn 100 points, or you can only earn a maximum of 100 points to be graded on, then you shouldn't have the opportunity to earn 120 points. That's what I mean.
Yeah, each step is worth 100. Yeah,
Actually,
right. So an example of that would be, obviously, if you have a 100-question test on step 1, each point's worth 1, so that makes that easy. The other score for step 2, when you're doing your scenario-based thing, however many questions divided out, each one's worth, that may change whether it's 10 questions or 15 questions that's on that bullet point. Those would be divided out by 100, and each question's worth that. Third one would be if we do 3 scenarios or 5 scenarios. If we're doing 3 scenarios, it's 33 1/3% for each one of those scenarios to the cumulative of 100. If we end up doing 5 scenarios, then it would be 20 points per group. So either way, step 3 would be an accumulative of all the processes or all the scenarios to equal 100 points.
Okay.
Any further discussion on that one, or are you guys good if we write it up and bring it back to you? All right. Do you want to go one for one, or you want me to go through all three of mine? Doesn't matter to me either way.
Go ahead.
All right. Next one, our second that I would like to bring up is Article 12, wages, 12.06, in reference to supplemental pay. It was negotiated before that we were going to have, or our expectations were that everyone was going to eventually get their EMT certification. I would like to strike out the part where it states all firefighters who are currently employed with ECFR will be required to obtain certification of EMT in the state of Florida within the term of this agreement or as practical. And add offering a grandfather clause or something to this effect of offering a grandfather clause for individuals to opt out of taking EMT prior to the contract. It would only be offered to individuals wanting to take the class. IFF Local 4131 should provide a list of individuals wanting to take the EMT program and an additional list for who will be grandfathered. Should the individual opt to take the class, they will have 1 year to complete the program and obtain their Florida State EMT license. If the license is not obtained within 1 year of the start of the class, a full refund of the program will be repaid. And the intent there is we have individuals that never intended to take EMT, and I understand why that process was implemented. However, it causes a little bit of a financial issue with budgeting, and what I would rather, on our side, and what I would rather do is know exactly how many people we have to put through the program, because that allows me to budget appropriately. So, and it allows people that had never intended, that were joining the organization potentially 20 years ago that didn't want to take EMT, it allows them an option out. So the intent would be you guys would come up with a list of individuals that currently don't have their EMT. We would work with you on that. And then you would go to your membership for those individuals that don't have it, and this is how it would be presented is basically you can opt out, and at that point we'll never pay for EMT. If they want to go get it on their own, that's on them. But this is the one time they can opt out, and they're not going to be required to get EMT. For the individual that wants it, that allows me to know, okay, I've had 10 people that says they actually want to take the EMT program, and I can budget that over the next year or two to try and get them in that type of program. And then I have a fixed number. However, it's still going to remain the same that any new employees that are coming on, if they're cadets, we will put them through the EMT program through the cadet process, or if they're coming in certified already, they have to have EMT. That aspect doesn't change. It's just for people that are already currently in the system. And that's what I'm proposing there, is a one-time opt-out or grandfathering for individuals that don't want to take the program, and allowing us to figure out how many people we have actually out there that want to take it and budgetary purposes to put them through the program.
To say 1 year, 1 year is really not that long. And I'm worried about in terms of from the financial standpoint. So let's say you have, I think before there was 50 plus, what you were looking at before, something like that.
Right.
Okay. So what if only a handful of people opt out? It's still 45 to 50, that's still a
Then,
substantial.
correct me if I'm wrong, the intent is
Yes.
1 year from when they start the class.
Yeah, that was the intent. So it
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
1 year
okay.
from when you
Okay.
provide the list.
Yeah, when they start the class.
When they start the class,
Okay.
and I know that there's been problems in the past where an individual will in the program and they expect to have an unlimited amount of time to pass it. And that,
No,
if the program itself is only 6 months long, that gives them 6 months to take the test and get checked off through our process.
That would also allow maybe a batch go through right away.
100%.
Maybe it's a
Yeah,
year
allows them
later
to stagger
before
out
it's-
before
Yes.
it's financial.
Okay.
Right, so in other words, when I get a list and you come back and say, I have 20 guys that want to take the class, I can sit down on my annual budget and say, okay, I'm going to budget 10 for this year, 10 for that year. I will be able to supply you a list of the people that we're going to put in through each year. That allows them to know the times that they're going to have to take off. It allows them when they're gonna be up in the chain to move through that process. But it also establishes that, hey, it's not an indefinite amount of time that you get to go take tests over and over
Sure,
again.
sure,
It's,
yeah.
it's 1 year from the time that you start the program, which is typically a 6-month program. 6 months when that's done, then you'll have potentially another 6 months at that point to take the test as many times as you see fit. That's why I didn't throw however many times you want to take it. That's not my problem. But
Right.
you'll have 6 months to take the test and get cleared and then move on from there. So that's the intent, not a 1 year from the time that you agree
I
that
got
that
you.
would happen.
Now, you're saying, anybody coming in, cadet or whatever, have to have EMT. Now, is that at time of employment, or cadets, they're obviously, they're having to go through school and everything else, and that's a condition of employment to move on to firefighter, is you pass X, Y, Z, right?
Right.
Now, you're talking about a certified fireman that's applying, they may not have EMT. Would there be a clause to where it's like within a year of employment, they have to have it? And,
I'm not interested in that. I want people to have their EMT before they apply. And I
I'm
don't
just saying the application pool is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, no, and here's the problem. I'm gonna be upfront and honest with you guys. It creates a major problem with budgeting for overtime. Because if I have to put them through the class and it's a requirement for them to have it, then I have to pay for them to go take that class. So if I put them online for 24 hours and then I have to send them to a 6-month class, every time they get off the truck, there's a potential that I have to backfill that seat. If I have to backfill that seat, then I gotta pay somebody on overtime to come sit there while this person goes to class. And that causes us a hardship, just to be upfront.
And
So
not
that's,
only that, on your management side, then you have someone that has to track all those individuals that do not have that, and what is the outcome if they don't get it within the 6-month time. So that adds additional work on your management staff to.
so again, that's why I'm saying for people that are wanting to apply, that's a pretty much a set standard that a lot of the people in the state are going with, is that you have to have that. So it's not an uncommon standard to have. And I'm gonna be quite honest, I don't wanna, maybe poor choice of wording here, but I don't wanna dumb down our jobs to make it that we can just put anybody in here. I want us to have a higher standard, and I want us to say that this is what we wanna do, and this is the standard we're gonna have to get people in here. And by doing that, it just helps us save financially, or instead of investing with those people to go take EMT class, now I can invest into the membership that's already here to put other programs on. That's really what it boils down
So
to.
you're not getting rid of the cadet thing, you're gonna maintain that.
Cadets will still be available, but if you'll also notice, just to kind of fill you in and educate you, that's why we're running EMTs back to back with firefighter 2 programs, is because I don't want to run a firefighter 2 program, send them out on the truck, and then recall them later where I have to pay overtime to do that. Or if I run the EMT program back to back on it, then I don't staff those trucks till afterwards.
Well, that was kind of what I was going to, okay, we don't want to get firefighters and then, put them online and go this and that. But there's nothing stopping that certified fireman from applying for a cadet position to go through EMT. So there is an avenue to still recruit and retain people. They're just not coming in as a fireman at that rate. They're coming in at the cadet rate until they're certified on. So there's an avenue for, I'm thinking the recruitment aspect to make sure we can still keep a pool of people. Hey, yeah, you can apply with us, but you can't go on a line until you have, you'll come in as a cadet type
Yeah,
thing.
there's a potential they can still do that. We have and it still makes it difficult. For example, a lot of the cadet programs that we do, I haven't had that scenario where we have a firefighter 2 come in and then he wants to just take the EMT.
Right.
So then that causes a problem. So then if you have this firefighter 2 and I bring cadets in that don't have any of those, now I have to hold this guy with his firefighter 2 because for 6 months to take while the other group is taking the firefighter 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna pay him to potentially do that. I guess he could ride on a rig. I don't know, I haven't really thought about it.
Or you just, hey, your conditional employment starts at this point in time, understanding that you have to go through EMT school, take it or leave it.
Yeah, I think that would be up to the county.
Yeah.
If we don't have a problem if you want to hire a single cert firefighter, 'cause we know we need people, we know we're having the availability of certified firefighters is a problem. However, I understand the management's issue with these contracts, these commitments of, oh, I'll go get my EMT or whatever, pass it and all that.
Right.
You never really know if they're gonna pass, and I know it's a burden to try to recruit and go through all that process. I do think we can improve the process as far as sitting down with an employee or a bargaining member who's entering into one of those contracts, just to clear that, I would have no problem at all with bargaining representative being there to, one is a witness, but two is just kind of to ensure that the employee fully understands this is what this means.
Clear.
There is no opt-out. Don't try to look at this document and figure out how to lawyer it and that other stuff. If you don't complete by this date, you owe money. That's the end of the discussion. I don't care if they didn't buy you the right trapper keeper or whatever in the contract. I don't care. If you don't get your stuff by this date, you owe money. Maybe that would help some of these things in the future too. But the point is, I think you have to have some latitude there that if we need to go staff the station, and you have to bring folks in, you gotta do what you gotta do, and that means you gotta sign a contract, a random one-off here or there, for them to make that commitment to go get their EMT. I don't want to limit you from that. Maybe that's not a common practice or your initial
Right.
goal. I agree with that. I think with all the back and forth over the last 6-7 years on this particular issue, it seems that we're at a point of consistency where we want new hires to have EMT and fire extinguisher. So I think that's fine.
So we can draft up as long as you guys are in agreement, and we'll work in conjunction with you to make sure that you guys have all the people that need to be in there that don't have EMTs. In other words, we have the list. We can work through the training division to pull people's records to make sure that we're trying to capture everybody. We don't leave someone out. But ultimately, it would be on your end to provide the list of the people that are being grandfathered, opting out, and the people that want to take the test once that list is put together. So, and we can.
Well, I think we
draft
should
up
utilize, probably best to utilize county email in that regard, so because they're required as employees to check that email. So that would be at least knowing for full certainty that they received the information of that opportunity. And
Yes.
from there, but
No, the intent would be, we would take care of that aspect of it.
I got you.
You would just provide us the list of the people that want to do it. We would communicate with them from that point forward.
Understood. Yeah, no, that's good.
I do like the fact that they have bargaining agreement. We sit down and go over the contract, they understand it.
Yep.
I just think that would be very well stuff.
Yeah.
They already said it, but I agree with you about having a bargaining member there when we do
Well,
contracts. That way
I
it's
think
very
that's just a
clear.
matter of practice.
And that way it's across the board, everybody's on the same page, and we don't have this ambiguity at the end of it, or somebody, like you said, trying to lawyer the document or something.
And I think simplifying language in these contracts to where it is, your objectives are X, Y, Z, they're very
And that's
short,
it.
explained. You put a check in the box instead of this long paragraph for each little thing. No,
Well,
you beat this, you know?
I think that was something that the last issue, they re-examined and cleaned all that up and made it more simplified, but it's kind of like you're sitting down and buying a new car, you're not listening to any of that other stuff, you're just like, yeah, let me sign it, let me go.
Right.
So,
All right, well, we'll get something drafted up on what we talked about here for the next meeting.
okay.
And then the last thing I have is Article 16, and it's under miscellaneous benefits, which would be 16.06 uniforms. And as you all know, right now, the current uniform is $400. We would like to allocate that and move it up to $425. I understand, before we get into discussion about it, I understand that there's probably a percentage rate that the price of that gear has gone up more than that $25. Unfortunately, this year, we've already budgeted for a certain amount to go to Galls, and that's literally everything we can do to get you to where you need to be. With that being said, we've also drilled down and taken away some of the things that are on the Galls list. This is just a management thing, I'm just letting you know. Drilled down and taken some of those things away, so there's not a lot of ancillary items out there. It's kind of more dwindled down to what's necessary to function, so it allows people to purchase those things that are truly needed and not just all these other bells and whistles that they can blow their money on. So by allowing a little bit more money and kind of tightening up a little bit on what can be purchased, I think that's going to help out a little bit. And again, the intent is, I know you could probably come back and tell me that it's gone up 20%, and that's not 20%. I'm just telling you up front, that's the money that's in there, and that's all that I can do for this year, and pretty much taps it out. With that being said, probably the more important thing is I'm looking at trying to do something for year 1 and 2. What I've seen in the past is with kind of just an open cart, if you will. People were able to purchase whatever they felt were necessary. And as you well know, through direction in the last 3 or 4 months, I'm looking to make people a whole lot more uniform and holding them a whole lot more accountable to the way that we look. I think it's important that if we want to be touted as professionals and we want to hold that designation, that we need to make sure that we look the part. And if we're not looking sharp out there in the public, ultimately that's who we're dealing with. And by doing that, the year 1 and year 2, I want to give a package to an individual's that allows that standard to start. And then after, in the year 3 or 4, we open the card up just like members that have been here for a while currently already have. So what I've proposed is that year 1, they would get 2 Class B shirts, 3 pair of pants, 1 belt, 1 pair of boots, and 1 jacket. Again, I realize, and to be quite frank, that's over the 125 mark. That's being more generous than I would have given.
How many pair of pants you said?
3 pair of pants. So that's actually more generous than the 425. So if I just laid 425, they wouldn't even be able to get those things. So that would be year 1. Year 2, they would get 2 more Class B shirts, 3 more pair of pants, a ball cap, a rain jacket, and rain pants. So those are the basically the bare minimums that allow us to function. And the Class B shirt, they can choose whether they want 1 long sleeve, 1 short sleeve, whatever the case may be. But it basically keeps someone from going out and buying a Class A uniform their first year and can't even provide the appropriate dress attire for a day-to-day function. And I always encourage, and you can go out and buy additional things off that at the employee's expense. So if they feel that they need additional items to help themselves look professional or they want to hold themselves to a higher standard, I always encourage for somebody to purchase more. I do it myself all the time. But the intent here is to make us more uniform.
Okay. I definitely like the move as far as the year 1, year 2 package. And I understand you're constrained to a point as far as this current fiscal year. I think a year 1 package should include some more. We did go to the 48-hour rotation. So with that in mind, 3 pair of pants, even in summer months when you're sweating all the time, we're supposed to wear our pants under our bunker gear and things like that, unless you have PT shorts on, what have you. But a lot of times you end up in your pants. You're sweating through your clothes very frequently for 7 months out of the year at least, probably so. Not to mention the busier companies that hit fires and stuff like that. So you can make 3 pair of pants work for sure, but you're doing a lot more laundry than maybe you were doing before. The Class B shirts, I think maybe we should add a long sleeve in there for the initial package. I think there probably be some adjustment there, but to your point, you're going to drastically see that 425, you're going to see $600 mark, to put the things they need to have. At the same time, some of those are one-time purchases, really, or it's not reoccurring costs. A proper winter coat or a job shirt or something like that's not something you're buying every year. Rain gear is not something you're buying every year. But they are important things to have because when you need them, you really do need them.
So it's like you front load year 1 and you reduce year 2. So it's like, okay, so 3 pairs of pants this year, 3 next year. We do 4 the first year, 2 the next year.
Right.
So now you're still at the same total, but you're front loaded the front.
Sure.
Where they have that extra and they can rotate out, and it's not destroying that one set of clothes.
So let me back up and kind of give you a little more information. So we're already in fiscal year 23-24. The budget's already set. It is this much. This union contract negotiation is good for 1 year basically, and we can readdress this, but I have a certain amount of funds that I can deal with. So that's kind of the intent here, was to say, hey, here's the funding, a little more. It wasn't just kind of just thrown out on paper. We actually went, as you well know, we have roughly 23 to 25 cadets, So that was where this number kind of came from. It's
Okay.
more than we've typically seen in the past. So if we're getting a little 5 or 10, it's a little easier to swallow that bigger pill up front. But because this year we have so many, I have a finite budget that I'm already dealing with this year. And we're talking about a contract over the next year before we go into the next contract negotiations. It kind of stopped, it's a stopgap. Kind of figured where we're at. So
Well,
that was the
I would
intent.
look at this as to finish the current year we're in, not
Yes.
even extending into next year. 'Cause we should be discussing our new contract. The current contract expires on the 30th of September, right? So.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Understood. Yeah, we.
I'd like to have
For the
further
upcoming-
discussion, and with budget season's coming up, and I can look at it trying to do more. What I'm telling you is, this is pretty much what I can do with the money that's already currently out. That
No,
line's already been signed and moved on,
We
so.
appreciate the attempt to put something back into the system for the folks there. I mean, it'd be easy enough to say, yeah, there's really not enough there to matter, so we'll just hang on to it kind of thing. So the work done to analyze it and see what can be given back is definitely appreciated. It just, unfortunately, the cost of uniforms has gone up. So it's been $400 since before I got hired. And back then, you used to get a free pair of boots, like quality, nice work boots, not 1 year and they're done boots.
Right.
That's gone. That grant or whatever that provided, that's gone. So absorbing the cost of needing to buy your own footwear, and then of course the cost of goods going up so much. $400 doesn't get you a whole lot these days either. So.
I don't disagree, and again, the intent was to do the best we could with what we have this year and show you guys that you matter, you count, and we're trying to do everything we can with the budget that we're given. And I didn't want to just leave it at 400. I wanted to show you that we're trying to do something and I feel that we have an obligation as an organization to step forward. If I'm going to sit here and expect you guys to look professional, then I have to provide you the best that I can to look that way, and that's the intent here.
I do have a question, because it's been brought up once or twice about uniform and golf procedures. People put their order in a timely manner, and it's on back order. Then all of a sudden, right before it shuts off and it's going into the new year, they're canceled. And now you have no way, you're out that money that you just allocated for your gear. One, you haven't received the gear, and you're losing that money because we're rolling into the next year. So they've lost that benefit. So how do we go about fixing those kind of situations?
So that was the intent that we looked at this year, is trying to minimize those amounts so that if we can pull in and say we only offer 2 or 3 different styles of pants instead of 6 different styles of pants, hopefully we'll know from the vendor that, hey, these are going to stop and we can move them over to another set and say, hey, okay, these are no longer available. The stock, the merchandise isn't coming in a timely manner. Remember, Galls themselves aren't making these. There's other vendors through Galls.
Right.
So it's the vendors through Galls that are having the issues, not Galls itself. So the intent there is also kind of a multiple fold. We start looking quote unquote uniform by having the same attire, but also when we run into those issues, we're able to address them a little bit sooner, hopefully, and move to the other set of pants that are available.
I thought that's how we had expanded the options over the last couple of years, was because of running into some of those. At least these are on back order instead of, well, my pants are on back order. Well, you got other options there, so pick another pant and move on, or a shirt, whatever it was. I thought that's how we got to that point.
Well, unfortunately, it got that, and then none got deducted. Next thing you know, there's so many different styles of pants. The word uniform in itself means everybody looks similar or the same. And when we start putting too many in there, it's not, while it's a uniform, it's not uniform in itself. So again, that's the intent. But yes, we will do our very best. Just like this year, it was difficult. We were having some issues with Galls. They manipulate the systems to a certain degree, and so trying to get them to button it up is taking several weeks, but it should be turned on this week to get those orders in.
So if we run into a significant case where somebody, hey, they're out $150, $200, they didn't get 3 pairs of pants or something like that, and they just got canceled, and now we're rolling into the new year, case by case basis.
We'll work with them, yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep. Those are the 3 items I had.
All right. I have a lot of copies, so maybe a couple. Do you want one, or
Please.
I don't know if I want to give you one.
Because you get nothing.
Get nothing. Stop there. So I'd like to start with the 22 fitness and wellness program. Just wanted to add some language in there that's highlighted. Excuse me. We have discovered, I think we've all discovered over the last couple of years since UKG has graced us with its presence, for all the 98% of good it's done for the rest of the county, and even within the fire service, there are undoubtedly some issues that it presents with shift workers. So this, in our opinion, is one of them. The incentive program for the AFA, the Annual Fitness Assessment, was intended to be just that, an incentive, a positive thing for employees who score 100, maintaining their fitness level, which of course should reduce injuries. It's good all the way around, right? Unfortunately, because this wasn't a problem in the past, when we went to UKG, the way that it's paid out, it can be harmful. You know, if you decide to exercise, use some of that leave during a long cycle, it cuts into your hours work. So we feel like that language, and I hope that you were, both of y'all, your experience with UKG, explaining the intent is that leave should not count as, it should count as hours work leave. It shouldn't harm you in the
So
terms
that
of.
doesn't have to do with UKG, that actually has to do when we renewed your contract last time, we went to FLSA standards. So FLSA standards is time worked only. So what you're asking for is to have this administrative leave counted as time worked.
Okay.
I understand the intent.
Okay.
If that language captures that, great. If that's how we can make it work, that's fine. I just wanted to make it clear in the contract, because it's the feedback that I've got when I've gone through my channels to question that was that, well, this is how we have to pay this out. This is what's in your contract. It's like, I understand that's not really the intent you were after. It's not the intent we were after. That's the way that's past practice, the way it's been. And unfortunately, just through
We
the
would word
systematic
this a little-
change.
If this is something we would agree to, we would word this a little differently
Okay.
to show that the intent is to count as time worked. So,
Okay.
you can go through the rest of them and then we can caucus and
Yeah,
discuss this.
absolutely.
Okay.
That was actually what I was gonna recommend is just give your proposals, and instead of
Not a problem.
giving you yes or no's, because it's not always just me that's involved with those, that will caucus and then come back with
Okay.
a response.
I gave y'all my copy, so what you got behind? What's next?
Article 13, promotional procedures.
Okay. This one was difficult, just because looking for the right place to put this in. We essentially what we would like to accomplish is to bring some uniformity. The fire service in our area, especially all our neighboring jurisdictions, and I think we're one of the few. We're definitely in the minority of departments that still operate in a capacity to where the company officer is a lieutenant. You know, there may be departments where it's structured that way, the company officer is lieutenant, but there is a driver's position that exists. An apparatus operator position does exist. And some people call them engineers, chauffeurs, sergeants. There's all types of different ways they break it down. So looking at the structure that we currently have, you know, firefighter, lieutenant, and captain. And of course, last year we see we're expanding the use of the captain. We have line captains now out of the beaches, things like that. So we know there is an importance, and we have tried for years. There's been a desire by management and labor for years to implement a driver's position, that institute that role. Obviously, with the structure that we have, it would be very difficult to shove a driver's rank into the the current pay scale and structure. So, okay, well, how can we adapt this? I feel like the easiest way to do that, and the most common sense way to do that, would be to shift to do what two of our neighboring departments did. Midway and Holly Navarre both did this several years ago. They made the company officer position that of a captain, and they utilized the rank of lieutenant to become that engineer position. That's what City of Pensacola does, Midway, Holly Navarre, Navarre Beach. I think Orange Beach does. I mean, everybody around us, Fort Walton Beach, they all operate that way. We feel like that would encompass and allow us to achieve that and not have to do the work of trying to restructure or shove a rank in the middle there. It would be, a promotable position, obviously, but I don't think it would take a great deal of change to what Chief Harrison has already offered. You adapt the scenarios a little bit, the written test a little bit, just like you currently do. Lieutenant doesn't take the same written test as a battalion chief, obviously, so you just shift your process around a little bit. Obviously, with that would also, we feel like, help capture some of the needs that, as far as wages and building out the department and steps, and kind of set us up for the future the way it needs to be, without having to. I feel like it'd just be an easier process. So, wanted to put that up for discussion. I think if you guys discuss and talk about it, I feel confident that just because there's been a desire in the past by both management and labor to implement a driver's position, I think Chief Harrison is more than capable of explaining the significance of that role, should need be. So anyway, that's the gist of that.
And that obviously would work in conjunction with Article 12, because if you're gonna do that, it's gonna have to have a wage to it, so
Yes,
it's kind of.
obviously. Article 12. Third.
Instead of, you wanna go to 12, or you wanna go to that supplemental pay?
Well,
Or kind of use that underneath?
It's in,
Okay,
that
I
is
got
in
you.
wages, it's just
I got you.
additional part. So the wages, see the new bracket there. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, and we've seen this past October. We saw a pay structure that was adopted a few years back. There were some issues with it. I know you've done a tremendous amount of work trying to correct some of the problems associated with that. To me, I'm sure you have too. But the gist of it is, a scale that has 2% increments and whatnot. And then we see the last round is a 3% raise. And everybody, I think every employee in the county is there going, how does that work? What do we do? I still am not sure what happened to the pay scale at that point. Did we just water
The
it
new
throw it
one
in the
was
trash?
adopted
It was?
on September 21st, I believe.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I should have done a record request or something to try to get that, but we don't know what that scale is, or what it's gonna look like. And we were hopeful to try to either, modify that scale or at least adopt a path of progress to navigate it, a definitive step plan that would coincide with that county scale if possible. Without having that scale or without having any of that other stuff in place, we'll throw our own on the table and see where it lands. So, very simple chart here. We all know about the $15 minimum wage. Things coming along the line. In my opinion, not trying to beat up on the county, but in my opinion, we have been a little more, haven't been as progressive as we should have been in preparing for what's to come. Knowing what's happening around us in terms of other departments, the competitive aspect in terms of recruiting employees. The commissioners clearly set a desire for the growth of this department. They approved additional FTEs this last round, and while the cadet program is an incredibly positive thing and it's working, it's very slow. And as these other departments, the city of Pensacola just did 20% raises across the board, which is monumental, especially in terms of retention. That's huge in terms of retention. They didn't try to drum it down. They didn't try to hack out the officers or the senior firefighters. They said bam across the board, which is, you all know in terms of compression, that's great. So everybody's seeing those things, and they're looking at who's making progress. And we don't mind, you know, being the bigger ship and moving a little slower as long as we're moving in the right direction and we're getting where we need to be. You know, we're not chasing other departments. But we feel like this captures that. So what we looked at was what's the percentage increase of over minimum wage. And we went off of the last scale that we had, which was the $11 minimum wage. And the starting rate at that point was $12.99. So we, kick me if I'm getting this out of line, but I think we're right. So we rolled it up forward and take it through the next steps. That's where we wanted to capture whatever the percentage increase was at that time for each respective rank, and that's where you see those numbers start, and then we step up from there year over year. It's a 3-year deal. There's 3 increases associated with this. That first would be what we felt like should have occurred this past October. Should, again, not sound like an ass, but if the county had been progressive on this and been keeping up with it, like this is where we feel like we should have been taking off with it. So, that explains that chart. If I have any questions, please jump in.
Yeah, I got a question on that real quick.
Okay.
So just so I'm understanding what you're saying, firefighter 2026, 1771.
Yep.
Obviously, minimum wage will be 15 at that point. How
Yep.
you derived to that number was currently, or 2 years ago, minimum wage was $11. We were paying $12.99. So whatever percentage that was in between those two is the percentage between $15 and $17.71.
Exactly. So basically, how it was done and formulated is each one of those percents above. So minimum wage, it was based on $11 minimum wage. We were at $12.99 for the firefighter starting pay. That's a $1.99 difference, which is roughly 18.09% above minimum wage.
Okay.
So this chart maintains that 18% above the minimum wage that's
Understood.
associated with, you know, October 1, 23 was $12, so we make it 14. 24, that's 13, so it becomes 15. It just maintains. So the county said, hey, we say you should be 18% above what minimum wage is. That this just captures that. And the same thing through lieutenants, captains, and battalion
And I
chiefs.
could figure it out, but if you've already got it figured out, what is the percent
Roughly
increase
20.
per block? 20%?
No, it's
So 1417 to
Per-
1535.
if you retroed them, if you did the moving past the 14, and 14 was the starting rate. Each gap from that point forward equates at the end. A firefighter would be about a 24% increase, and the others would be 22.5.
Do you have it what it is per block? In other words, 23
Per block, yeah. So from 14 to 1535, that's 7. I'm sorry, that one's 9.5. Next gap, 15 to 16 is 7.6 or 7.5, and the last one is 7. When you step down to lieutenant, you got late last night 9. Next is 7.5. The last is 7.
It's slightly
Yeah.
decreased, but yeah, I'm following.
That's your trend.
Okay.
Which again falls in line with what we're seeing with other agencies and how they're trying to make up that delta and get to where they need to be.
Do you know what that 20% increase where the city was at their hourly?
I do not have that information on their hourly.
Okay.
No.
That's good.
Oh, and you know,
And I'm not saying that makes any difference. I'm trying to figure out
different
a way to get you
municipalities,
there.
they calculate wages differently, right? I mean, we look at the 2920 annual hours. I hope that's a standard, but it's not everywhere. You know, Tallahassee's they're on a weird thing. They don't do 2920. They're looking at trying to go to like a 40 or 45-hour work week or something like that. But places are doing things differently. They're implementing Kelly days. They're going to a 24/72 cycle and stuff like that. They're trying to be creative, which is great. Trying to find creative ways to incentivize.
They may be
I don't
doing
wanna
2
go to a
years, 3
24
pay cycles, all of this stuff.
You know, a 24/72 is an incredible idea, but I think it's way out of reach for us, and it just doesn't work here. We don't have enough employees. If we were at the 400 or 500 personnel mark, where we frankly we should be in the future, maybe that's something you look at that point. If we can get a fire academy up and we're producing our own folks and that type of stuff, maybe that's something we could adapt to. But at this point in time, it's really not feasible. The county already stipulated and allowed us to transition to the 4896. We're seeing, to me, I think that's a positive schedule for the most part. So that's been good. Allows folks to get appropriate rest and things like that they need to.
So as far as the city, they did 21%. It's over 3 years, 12% the first year, 7% the second year, and 2% the third year.
Yeah.
That's what the city did. Their starting pay is currently 12. Their starting pay will end at 16 in 3 years.
And that
It's roughly
included,
43,000, puts them about
and that
52,000.
included the firefighters, lieutenants, and the captains, but no battalion chiefs.
That's
It doesn't say that, but
I know it didn't include battalion chiefs.
well, if you look at their battalion chiefs
I know.
compared
this is
to our
only,
battalion
this is only
chiefs,
referring to
there's a
starting
pretty good
pay
delta
and what they're doing
in
for
between
their
there.
starting pay. It doesn't refer to the rest of their.
as there
That's
are
what
with
I
the other
have
ranks.
from the city.
But
You know,
they're not.
when you look at what
They weren't. They're not in the CPA over there. They're in the CPA here. So
So sure, but when you look at what a lieutenant here, our body of work, it's comparative to a captain in the city, and there's a significant pay delta between those two. But that lends into the first point of shifting those ranks and stuff like that and bring things in line.
Yeah, because typically, and I will admit, we are non-traditional as it relates to our rank structure. So I don't disagree with that.
I mean, there's a lot of things that we've been this big snowball, and it's rolling forward. It rolls slow sometimes, but it's rolling. We know. I think it's great that we've seen a change. We've seen commitment from the county. Apparatus purchase, things like that. Spent a ton of money on that. We understand that. But that was needed. That wasn't a desire. It was absolutely needed. We're going to need more fire stations in the future. We're going to need to continue growing. But with that, the cadet program has been in place now, 2-3 years. I think it's growing, and it's good. We're seeing positive change. We need to see continuing growth, and in order for us to, I don't want to just compete with other departments. I want this to be the place. And from what I've seen from statements that all of the commissioners have made, that's what they want as well. And I think we have the workload here that's attractive to bring people. That's there's no doubt there. But this, frankly, newer generation of folks that you're trying to recruit, they are looking at the dollar. They are looking at the benefits. And we're doing the work on the state side to improve those benefits so we can be competitive with these little private pension departments around us. And I think that's going to roll forward, and that's great. But we got to get the pay structure there as well. And I think if we do that, this place is unstoppable. We go back to what it was when I hired on, and you've got 100 people out there for an agility test, and you're back to picking the cream of the crop. You have some competition. You're raising the bar. You're raising the caliber of employee that's working here. And it's within grasp to achieve that. Just got to get there. I know administration needs to grow too. You got a lot of things you're juggling. There should probably be 2 to 3 times the number of administrative personnel. I know. And hopefully we'll figure out how to get there within a few short years. So,
I hope so too.
while you still have a few hairs left on your head.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's. You have any more questions?
No. I see where you're coming from on your proposal. Again, we'll have to sit and talk about that and see what we can come up with, and potentially see what we can come up with, and maybe give you a different proposal.
Okay.
We can take a few minutes to caucus.
I mean,
and
give
you want to
discuss
look-
these
you want to
and
finish
then,
this last one? He's got one more.
This is part of wages too.
Look, I
So
already
it's,
made my notes. I thought we talked about it.
okay. The last one's again supplemental pay, the MT thing, and again, I maybe this piggybacks together with what you proposed as well. Where we're at, we watched what was it 2 years ago the great EMS bidding wars that took place for paramedics and all that with a private company, and again great phenomenal changes with our paramedics. However, with the changes, unfortunately, EMS still, the struggles still continue. And the workload, the medical workload has increased on our side for those EMTs especially. So we were looking to see a change there. That's a market change. Talking about the city of Pensacola, they just increased to a $3,000 a year BLS incentive up from, I think, $1,500. So we're,
I'm sorry, that you said the city is offering a $3,000 if they have their EMT?
As
Is it a job requirement? And obviously I can go find these myself, but I'm asking you.
I
what
don't
the
know if
city-
they're required. I don't think they are.
Are they required to be an EMT to?
I don't believe so. I think it's incentive.
It's incentive.
Okay.
But it's just an increase there. So that's it.
All right, sounds good. Well, if you give us an opportunity.
We would like 2-ply toilet paper in all the firehouses from here on out.
Charmin orders off, please.
Okay, so we'll get rid of Article 12 and supply 2-ply.
Well, you can get rid of Article 1206.
I don't know what kind of toilet paper you got at your house, but that's
On that note, I'm gonna stop the recorder. Alright, we are back from caucus. So I think, I'm gonna speak to a couple of these. So as far as Article 22, what we are agreeing to today is that we agree that the intent of the contract was for this to be time worked. So they're gonna change their internal process from administrative leave to administrative duties. We'll do that internally rather than taking this to the board. That is an internal change on the record today. And then we do have a proposal that we're not gonna present today, but when we get to your full contract openers for that article. So that way we don't have to take it to the board and turn around and take it to the board again. Does that make good? Is that agreeable?
Yep.
Okay. So Tamika, you have to tell your battalion chiefs. Wages. So we cannot agree to anything for 23. The 23 FY24 budget, October 1, 2023 is already set. There's nothing we can agree to. We do like the format, we do like the proposal. It's something that Chief Harrison's gonna work on to include some additional information. What we would like to do with you guys today is I can look at Mr. Moreno's calendar and we can agree to meet sometime in May or June after the budget process. And we will know better where we stand with budget to move in even before your contract's open. So we're not going into it after budget's already set. We're going into it before the budget is set and we have an idea of what we can even offer. That's that. And then on your other two articles, again, because these align right along with that, we can't agree to anything for this year because, again, budget is already set for this year.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, obviously, what's important is moving forward. I understand it's a big grab as far as the wage thing. It's a big consideration. What we're hopeful doesn't occur again as has occurred in the past is by the time we sit down for negotiations, the budget is not set, but there have been so many meetings already or workshops or what have you that this is like, well, this is already a done deal kind of thing. That's incredibly frustrating because it's not a negotiation at that point. It's just
Take it or leave it.
here you go. If anything, I hope what we would like to be understood is that any progress forward is always greatly appreciated. However, we have surpassed the point of where 2% or 3%, across the board increases are not sufficient to keep up with current market. So something more significant needs to happen. We would like to see a more significant shift. That comes in the form of it's paid out in the life of a contract where it's 2 or 3 steps or something like that. Definitely amenable to that. We'd like to have that discussion. But 2 or 3% at a time is just it's still so far off base of market value.
We and again, just like I said, we have the same ideals.
Mm.
It's not up to us in this room.
I
So
understand.
we have to talk to OMB. You do know you're being very much supported by the general fund. At this point in time, the general fund cannot support anymore. So we have to see what revenues look like before we can even talk about FY '25, which is your October 2024.
And I know, I understand the bind that you're in. I get it. And yeah, I mean, that was something that was discussed a couple years ago as the general fund started supplementing our budget, and it got more and more heavily supplemented. This is going to become a problem. You know, the MSBU used to fully support us, and I still have the opinion that if the MSBU was set at an appropriate value, it could be sustainable for our budget. You know, when you look at, again, surrounding jurisdictions, I'm sure you've researched this, but we're so far off base. If you looked at if you broke it down by household, you know, what the MSBU is, and you broke out what the general fund supplements, I'd be willing to bet that amount per household is up there where we've been saying for years it should be going to. I mean, they're making big moves in Santa Rosa County. You know, there's a bill that's probably going to pass this cycle that's going to put the minimum household payment at $250, and then they're having an ad valorem kicker for square footage. I know exactly what that's going to do in Pace. As rough as that may be for taxpayers, it's going to allow that jurisdiction to catch up and do the things it needs to do to provide an adequate service. Midway is probably the only one that might struggle with that just a little bit, but at the same time, their neighbors, Holly Navarre, are begging to be a part of that because they understand it allows the opportunity for them to actually catch up and do what they need to be able to do, provide the service. So it's great that Escambia County is a bigger machine, and you know, it's that ideology of we're bigger, we can do things cheaper, more streamlined, but we have outgrown that revenue so substantially. I don't know I'm preaching to the choir in this room, but unfortunately, we don't have control over, nor do you. We don't have control of setting what our revenue stream is. Something has to give, right? Somewhere along the way.
You did.
Would you be able to give us a copy of the current pay scale?
Actually, that's just what I was getting ready to tell
Thank you,
you.
ma'am.
Is that I have hard copies for you, and you can find the actual pay scale on the website
It is.
at Careers My Escambia, and it's at the bottom of the tab that says pay scale.
Okay.
So if you just go to our career page, you'll have it.
Is that a working document?
I doubt it.
No.
Is there a way to get a working document?
Yes, I can send you one.
So we went back to quartiles, huh?
Yes.
Well, just for education purposes, can I ask why? And
Because
how
I
that
read
works
about,
with hourly rate, like shift workers? Yeah.
I ran about 1,000 scenarios, and there was not a single scenario that would work within the confines of budget to give us 3% this year and maintain the previous pay scale. So it was either do away with the pay scale or county employees only get 2%. And they really wanted to move forward with the 3%, so we had to change the pay scale. And at this point in time, we went back to quartiles.
But we still practice 2% increments.
And we're still practicing the same percentage. So from your 9 to 24, it was 26%.
20%.
Whatever, no, 9 to
No.
24 is, you're thinking of EMS. I think it's 26%. We're still practicing. We have it all written down in a document.
Yes.
Before we changed the pay scale, we went through every scenario within the county, whether you were fire, EMS, PBA, figured out what those percentages were between the steps, and we still use those percentages internally.
Well, no, and I mean, the problem that exists for us, well, I would say with any bargaining unit, quartiles is, you can have this, but if you don't have a mechanism to move within it, a defined mechanism of, you know, annually, you're gonna receive 2% or 3% or whatever, biannually is 6%, whatever. For us, that's always been the challenge, is trying to get that vehicle in place that's defined. So if we stick with quartile, it's fine, we still wanna would like to have that vehicle there. I'm sure you understand that. And this, I haven't worked in your divisions, but I would imagine is much more helpful when you have an HR associate coming in with previous experience. You can kind of negotiate that pay a little more and put them at a more appropriate level. And for recruitment purposes, you need the flexibility to do that. Our side of the house, he can't get a firefighter that has come in from another, across the state. Hey man, I worked 10 years in Miami-Dade, I want 20 an hour. He can't make that deal, without going through us, and we're not gonna agree to that, so.
Yeah. And that would be a change to the contract, so,
Right.
if, we say, we're gonna put together a table, and it's, this person's coming with 10 years' experience, we wanna be able to offer them X, that would have to be a change to your contract. We also have policies and procedures in place as far as exceptional hires for internally, just for your knowledge, that we don't go above a certain amount, and we have internal things that we look at, you have to have this to get this percentage.
Sure.
So we have internal policies and procedures that guide those, and that's what your union contract would do if we got to that.
I would like to be able to get to a point of it, again, with the challenges that we have in terms of recruitment. It's great, the cadet program is great, that we're being able to bring fresh folks in. At the same time, we're having to grow so rapidly with so many new people, that presents its own set of challenges as far as training, so much inexperience running around out there. So when you have that unique opportunity to, somebody wants to move to the area, if our wages were more competitive, I think we may attract folks that are more experienced and could come from other departments. But to me, we have to get there first, so that person with 10 years experience coming in that's got their USAR or hazmat or whatever, that when you negotiate that pay above the starting rate, it's putting them more in line with the folks that we currently have at that tenure. That's the problem that exists now. You bring that person in and throw a bone to them because they got all this extra stuff. They're coming in making more than a 15-year guy. So anyway, adjusting the wage scales can solve several other issues. Is the point, I guess. All right.
So then, just to recap, then, what tentative agreements we have today that Kristen would end up having to write, that would go to the board, is promotional procedures. You guys agree to what Adam proposed, and then leaving the 210, which I don't think was in there, but is already part of the.
It's already in there.
That was just like a point of order kind of,
Okay.
no.
And then under the EMT supplemental pay, the grandfather situation he explained, you guys tentatively agree to that? Okay. And then uniforms, you tentatively agree to that?
Yes.
Okay. We'll get Kristen to draft those, and then as far as your wellness, starting today, they will internally use the administrative duties code, and then we won't actually update the article. We agree the intent is to be time worked.
Sounds good.
Okay. And then we will look at something in the May-June timeframe to meet again. And then that would be kind of going towards your full contract opener.
Or is it your intention to open the contract and start negotiations before the expiration of the actual contract? That would be our desire.
Yes, that's our intent, if we have something that is tangible. If we can't even bring something tangible, we're gonna let you know that. But if we have something tangible for wages, absolutely. Regardless, we know we have full contract opener coming up. But our intent for May, June was that we have something tangible for wages to bring to the table and discuss.
I mean, maybe I just feel like that's the more appropriate path, and at the end of the day, would make it easier for everyone. We start having those discussions ahead of time before the expiration of the contract. So if changes are made, fiscal impacts, hopefully there are, it carries forward. You're not worried about calculating back pays and all this other mess. It's just part of the whole budget process. When they approve things, you know what's coming. In October 1, we're out the gate. It would be awesome to actually start a contract cycle on time without all the backdate mess, but.
So, and like I said, I think we have the same ideals. Hopefully we can meet somewhere
Get
on
there.
that and it just, again, meeting with budget and see where we land is, what that looks like.
And again, it just gives us an opportunity to have conversations with people behind the backgrounds before the contract actually gets put in place. It allows us to do the exact things that you're asking for and have those conversations about pay, where we can actually answer them and not have to hold a contract up or the budget cycle already be in process.
If that's all, then I will hop up, stop the recorder, and call it a day. Anything else? All right.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.